Script. What happens when a barefoot boy slips through the gates of a billionaire's mansion? This story will leave you speechless. Stay tuned because what unfolds next is nothing short of a miracle. Victoria Harrington had everything the world could offer: power, prestige, and a fortune that stretched across continents. Her name was etched in gold in the fashion industry, her designs worn by royalty and celebrities alike. Yet behind the towering gates of her oceanfront mansion, Victoria lived in a silence so heavy it felt like grief carved into stone. Her daughter, Sophie, was once the heartbeat of this home. At 8 years old, she was a whirlwind of laughter and light, racing through the gardens with ribbons in her hair, her giggles echoing like music. But that was before the accident, the boating trip that ended in tragedy. Victoria lost her husband that day, and Sophie lost the use of her legs. The doctors called it a miracle that Sophie survived. Victoria called it a curse that her child now sat in a wheelchair, her spirit dimmed like a candle in the wind. She tried everything money could buy: surgeries in Switzerland, therapies in Germany, experimental treatments in the US. Each attempt ended in the same crushing disappointment. Sophie's smile faded. Her laughter disappeared. She rarely spoke, and when she did, her voice was soft, almost apologetic, as if joy was something forbidden. Victoria walked through her mansion every day, past marble floors and crystal chandeliers, feeling like a queen in a kingdom of shadows. She had conquered the world, yet she could not conquer her daughter's silence. And that silence was killing her more than any headline or business failure ever could. One afternoon, Victoria stood by the window of her study, staring at the garden where Sophie sat in her wheelchair, motionless, her gaze fixed on the horizon. The ocean glittered beyond the gates, mocking Victoria with its endless freedom. She pressed her manicured fingers against the glass and whispered, "What will it take to bring you back to me?" She didn't know the answer. Not yet. But fate was about to send it, barefoot, hungry, and dancing. The afternoon sun draped the garden in gold, but Sophie barely noticed. She sat in her wheelchair under the shade of a magnolia tree, her small hands resting on the armrests, her gaze fixed on the iron gates beyond the hedge. The world outside seemed alive: cars humming, children laughing somewhere far away, but inside the mansion walls, life felt paused. That's when movement caught her eye. A boy, barefoot and thin as a reed, slipped through a narrow gap in the hedge. His shirt was torn at the collar, his shorts hung loose on his bony frame, and his hair looked like it hadn't met a comb in weeks. His knees bore the bruises of a life lived on concrete. But his eyes sparkled with something Sophie hadn't seen in months: mischief. He didn't speak. He didn't ask for food or money. Instead, he did something so unexpected that Sophie blinked twice to be sure she wasn't dreaming. He began to dance. Not the polished moves of a trained performer, but wild, exaggerated steps that made him look like a clown on a circus stage. His arms swung like windmills, his legs kicked high and then tangled in a dramatic stumble. He widened his eyes comically and pretended to fall, catching himself with a flourish so grand it could have earned applause in a theater. For a moment, Sophie just stared. Then, like a crack in a wall letting in sunlight, a tiny giggle escaped her lips. The boy froze mid-spin, then grinned and doubled down. He rolled on the grass, popped up like a jack-in-the-box, and crossed his eyes until Sophie's giggle turned into laughter. Real laughter. Loud, unrestrained, echoing across the garden like music Victoria hadn't heard in months. Inside the mansion, Victoria Harrington was signing contracts when the sound stopped her cold. She lifted her head, heart pounding. That sound, was it real? She rushed to the balcony and froze. Her daughter was laughing. Laughing so hard her cheeks glowed pink, her hands clapped with energy Victoria thought was gone forever. And the source of that miracle? A ragged boy spinning barefoot on her manicured lawn. Victoria's first instinct was fury. How had this street child breached her security? Where were the guards? What if he was dangerous? She opened her mouth to shout, but then she saw Sophie's face. Bright. Alive. Her back straighter than it had been in months. Her laughter ringing like bells. Victoria gripped the marble railing, her anger melting into something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Victoria didn't wait for the guards. She strode across the garden, heels clicking against the stone path, her silk blouse fluttering in the breeze. The boy froze mid-spin when he saw her. His grin vanished, replaced by the wary look of someone who knows what comes next, shouting, maybe a beating, maybe worse. Victoria stopped a few feet away, her voice sharp. Who let you in here? The boy swallowed hard, his bare toes curling into the grass. No one, ma'am. I just came. To steal? Her tone was ice. He shook his head quickly. No, ma'am. I saw her, she looked sad. I thought maybe if I danced, she would laugh. Victoria blinked. The words were simple, but they pierced through her anger like sunlight through clouds. She turned to Sophie and froze. Her daughter's cheeks were flushed, her eyes bright, her hands clapping with strength Victoria hadn't seen in months. Please don't send him away, Mommy, Sophie said, her voice trembling with urgency. He makes me happy. Victoria looked back at the boy. His shirt was torn, his shorts hung loose on a waist too thin. His knees bore scars that told stories no child should have to tell. But his eyes steady, not arrogant, not weak, held something rare. What's your name? She asked softly. Leo, he replied. Where do you live? Leo hesitated. Anywhere. Bus station. Sometimes under the bridge. Victoria's chest tightened. She had spent millions chasing doctors and treatments, yet here stood a boy with nothing except the ability to make her daughter laugh. She took a slow breath. You can stay, for today. In the open, where I can see you. No misbehavior. Do you understand? Leo nodded so fast his messy hair bounced. Relief washed over his face like rain on dry earth. He turned to Sophie with a grin. Ready for the next show? Sophie clapped, her laughter ringing like bells. And just like that, the garden became a stage again. Days turned into weeks, and Leo became a fixture in the Harrington mansion, though not in the way Victoria had ever imagined. Every afternoon at 4, the garden transformed into a stage. Leo danced like the world was his audience, spinning, hopping, and pulling faces so ridiculous that Sophie's laughter shook her shoulders. But it wasn't just laughter anymore. Victoria began to notice the little things. Sophie's hands grew stronger from clapping. She started lifting her arms to mimic Leo's moves. Her voice grew louder, more confident. She teased him, demanded encores, even tried to spin her wheelchair in small circles when he twirled on the grass. Each tiny movement felt like a victory. One golden afternoon, the miracle happened. Leo was mid-performance, doing his slow-motion robot dance, when Sophie suddenly shouted, "Wait. Let me try something." Her voice was firm, almost commanding. Victoria froze, her heart pounding. Sophie placed both hands on the armrests of her wheelchair. Her face tightened with effort. For a moment, nothing happened. Then slowly her shoulders rose, her chest lifted, and her hips trembled upward. 1 inch. 2. She held herself there, trembling like a leaf in the wind. 1, Leo whispered, eyes wide. 2, Victoria counted, tears blurring her vision. 3. Sophie gasped before sinking back into the chair, panting and smiling, eyes wet with joy. Silence fell over the garden, not the heavy silence of despair, but the holy silence that follows a miracle. Then Leo broke it with a shout. You did it. You stood. He spun 3 times and dropped to his knees beside her. Champion. Victoria knelt on the other side, her hands shaking as she touched her daughter's forehead. You are brave, she whispered. I am so proud of you. Sophie reached for both of them, one small hand for her mother, one for her friend. I'm not scared anymore, she said softly. When he dances, I feel like I can move. Victoria's heart cracked open. For months, she had chased miracles with money. But the miracle had come barefoot, with laughter and love. That night, Victoria made a decision. She found Leo sitting quietly on the back steps, arms wrapped around his knees, staring into the darkness as if unsure he belonged. She sat beside him, her voice gentle. You shouldn't be out here alone. Leo shrugged. I'm used to it, ma'am. Victoria shook her head. Not anymore. This is your home now. You'll eat 3 meals a day. You'll go to school. You'll never wonder where to sleep again. Leo's eyes widened, his voice trembling. Thank you, ma'am. Victoria turned to him fully, her own eyes glistening. You gave my daughter something no doctor, no medicine, no money could provide hope. And anyone who gives hope is family. For the first time in his life, Leo felt truly seen. Tears slipped down his cheeks as he whispered, I won't let you down. From that day, the mansion was no longer silent. It roared with laughter, claps, and cheers. Sophie's therapy improved. With Leo cheering beside her, she walked small steps, then longer ones. She still used her wheelchair sometimes, but fear no longer ruled her life. She was living again. And Victoria? She discovered a truth she had never known. Real wealth isn't in bank accounts. It's in love, kindness, and the courage to open your gates to someone who has nothing but gives everything. If this story touched your heart, let us know in the comments and tell us where you're watching from. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more emotional and inspiring stories. Until next time, stay kind, stay strong, and keep believing in miracles.